Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So we have some relatively small updates, but most of this is going to be going over all the kind of preview material we have ahead of the Voyage of the Unity Kickstarter. But we'll start off with the other piece of news, and that is that Displate have added some interesting new designs to the official Avatar shop. So Displate, of course, metal posters, but they're often a source of somewhat interesting new art. Now, it has been a while since I think I've covered some of the kind of newer ones. I think maybe up to here I've covered. So there's this kind of more generic Aang and Momo one with some standard stock art. There's a kind of nice-ish Appa one over here, Ba Sing Se. Then we get these more interesting graphical ones like Pai Sho, Team Avatar, Blue Spirit, I Laugh at Gravity with the glider here, the boy in the iceberg, Blind Bandit with the belt, Suki Kyoshi Warrior with the fan. And then the big one I wanted to highlight here is these three here, a new kind of collection added of duels, basically. Conflicts between characters. So Katara versus Hama, Chin the Conqueror versus Kyoshi, and Aang versus Ozai. So three very interesting ones here. If we look at them a little bit closer, you can sort of see that they've kind of taken effectively what's almost like a screenshot. Like you can almost find a frame in the episode that looks very similar to this, and they've really turned that into a proper poster here. So Aang versus Ozai looking very nice. The other ones are kind of more side to side. This one's more like head on. So that's kind of cool. Kyoshi versus Chin, obviously depicting the very moment that we of course saw, her separating the island from the continent and then blowing kind of Chin back, but mostly blowing the continent away, the island away. Looks very cool here. So just interesting because I don't think there's any other Kyoshi ones. There's some Kyoshi Warrior kind of Suki ones, but this is the first actual Avatar Kyoshi Displate. And then in my mind, probably the best one, just because the overall composition of this with the moon in the background, the lights kind of going through the water bending, the moment of this fight of Katara just stonewalling, Hama demonstrating the kind of difference in their power sort of skill. Fantastic moment here. So this is really, really good. If you love the this episode, the Puppet Master, Katara, Hama, this seems like the highlight of these three. But interested to see if they add more to this, because if we go in here, duels, you can see here it is its own sort of section where there's three of them, so maybe more will be added here as we go on. Like what fights would they put in here? But yeah, that's mostly everything there. Again, what I would say about Displates as ever is they are somewhat expensive for what they are. 44 is the sort of standard price for your basic one. But I would always say make sure you only buy these when they're on sale. So there is a 25% sale off at the moment, but you'll probably could find a code out there from someone, a creator, that gets it down to maybe 33%. If you sign up for newsletters, you get even kind of better discounts. They feel a lot better at around like 30 something than 40 something, because you have to add shipping on at the end as well. But they are pretty nice. They're good quality. You can see I have a Displate over here, and you've probably seen that change a few times over the course of my videos. I have 3 of them at this point, so they are pretty good quality. They do have Korra ones, but it's a very small selection. There's only like 14 of them, and it's all really early book 1 concept art stuff, and so it's not super interesting. But yeah, that's just to highlight these, and just to remember, like, hey, keep an eye out on these, like, because they do seem to add them every couple of months, and I assume that will continue as we go forward. Next, let's get into the preview stuff for Voyage of the Unity. So again, the Kickstarter for this through Beetle and Grimm is launching on May 20th on Kickstarter, so we're about 8 days away, so just over a week. It'll be next Tuesday when the Kickstarter launches. So let's go over what we sort of know about it so far. I've covered a few things, so I'm not going to go through everything in crazy detail, but you can see here, this seems to be the main image they're using to kind of highlight what it is. It's Roku, and I'm guessing Ryoshan, because they've still yet to confirm that it's her, but I think it is. Roku and Ryoshan on the Unity, the ship, heading out. So that's cool. That seems to definitely highlight just the fact that she is placed with Roku as like, surely they have to have a whole Legend NPC thing for her, and I'm guessing we'll maybe find out about that on the 20th. So again, it's set completely in the Roku era. All of the adventures are set on the Unity, in relation to the Unity, the Voyage across the world. And you can see that in some of the images which we get to here. So you can see they highlight here the Legendary Edition here. And again, this article I'm looking at here is on the original Kickstarter. So this is the Magpie Kickstarter for the core book. They're highlighting this as an update, and it has a few bits of information. You can see here the Legendary Edition. So this is going to be one of the higher tiers, where you can see you get PDFs, so everything in digital. You get a GM screen, that's this along the back. The 5 adventures, which is the core material. The Guide to the Unity, which is this little booklet here, but there's also core rules condensed. You get a box to put everything in. You get the flyers, leaflets, kind of handouts, the map of the Avatar world, some Avatar coins from the various nations in a pouch, and bending scrolls of some sort. So you can see they highlighted all here. You get digital copies of all this stuff, collectible box, GM screen, yep, exclusive Avatar world map, waterbending scroll. That's kind of interesting. You'll note when we go through it elsewhere, the wording is slightly different on specific parts. So I'm wondering what it ends up actually being with regards to stretch goals. Yeah, in-world handouts, encounter and location cards. I'm guessing that's what these 2 Roku images here are, where this looks to be Roku's kind of fact file from the game, and then this just looks like a kind of standout, cutout type thing that stands up of Roku. So will be interesting to see what that is. Area maps and coins. So yeah, that's that. If we go to the actual Kickstarter page for Voyage of the Unity, you can see the other image that seems to have Ryo-Shan in it, May 20th, and their big promotion they're highlighting is that if you back in the first 60 hours, so roughly the first 3 days, you will get a free Fire Nation coin, assuming you get a physical product tier where they will actually be shipping you out something. You'll get the Fire Nation coin. Now, you might be wondering, but hey, this comes with that same Fire Nation coin, but that's the Legendary Edition. There are multiple tiers of this that are going to be available, including a more basic tier. So if you get that basic tier that's mostly just the actual core books, you will get the coin as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, but you can see that we're now up to a situation where there's like 4,000 followers of the campaign. The marketing seems to be ramping up a little bit more, and I'll be fascinated to see how well this does when it actually all hits. But the big new thing, mainly the reason I'm doing this, is that they did send out a newsletter all about this. So Beetle and Grimm sent me to my email a newsletter about this. Voyage of the Unity on the 20th. They have this image again. They have the deal here, of course. Mostly go over the same information that we've had before if you are not familiar with the Roku era or what the Unity is. But then you can see here in this image, the standard edition. This is why you could get this back and get the coin if you wanted to. And what this is, you can see it's a slightly differently colored box, but it's the 5 adventures, the Guide to the Unity booklet, which actually uses this image on the front, and the rules, all together in this box. So that seems to be your standard tier. I wonder, will they offer a tier that's maybe just the booklets and this maybe just in the box, not without the GM screen if you don't want that? But this seems to be the standard kind of setup overall. Very in line, I think, with what a lot of the previous books have been in terms of the Republic City book or the Iroh Adventure Guide book. It's that similar amount of content with like a bonus item. In this case, it's the GM screen. Previously, we had like a dice tray type thing, so pretty similar. I do wonder if one of the stretch goals will be to combine all the booklets together into a hardcover book, just so it's more in line with everything else, because the whole point of this seems to be that the presentation is the big deal. So it's weird that right now it's actually the core material that you're buying that actually seems to be the least maybe interesting from a presentation point of view. So I definitely would like to see that all bundled together into a hardcover book that's basically the Unity Adventure Guide style thing. So that's cool. Then they go over the Legendary Edition, and you'll note that the image is slightly different. The 2 things in front here are not there anymore, but they are here. So, you know, I'm guessing that's what the encounter location cards, maybe that's like an add-on that is an early stretch goal, not really sure. But otherwise it is very, very similar. When they describe it though, you'll note that it says including bending scrolls with an S, Whereas back here, it just says waterbending scroll. Now, we'll get into that in just a second, because obviously they cover the idea of why there are multiple in a moment here. But this is the key line. Voyage of the Unity Kickstarter campaign features 6 pledge tiers, 13 add-ons, a long list of stretch goals to make the final editions even better. So as more money goes in, more people back this, it will unlock new stuff that gets added into the various kind of pledge tiers. So if this does really, really, really well, potentially all of the stretch goals will be added in as just extra items. And these sets here will probably have a bunch of extra stuff on them, and they'll look quite a bit different at the end compared to what they are now. And we'll talk about that as we go through it here. But yeah, let's just go over these images. I have them opened up here a little bit bigger. So the coin set, you can see here, coins from across the world of Avatar, Earth Nation coin, Earth Kingdom coin, that's this one. 2 Fire Nation coins, this one and this one, kind of silver and gold, and the Water Tribe coin here. Of course, the Air Nomads don't have their own like currency as such, all in a velvet pouch. And this is exclusively available in the deluxe edition and above. Now you'll note, going back here, legendary, standards, there is no deluxe edition. But there are 6 pledge tiers available. So one of them we know is going to be PDF, so just the digital content, if that's all you want. There's obviously going to be the standard edition. The deluxe edition, I'm guessing, is somewhere in between these two things, with my guess being that it is probably this minus the scrolls, because they will be the kind of big ticket item that I think adds a lot to the cost. Whereas I think a lot of people will actually want the map, want the handout stuff, maybe want the coins, but the scrolls as like the big ticket item might add a bit too much to the cost. That's my guess on what the deluxe set's going to be. It's just somewhere in between these two. So that's that. And again, the coins are part of the deluxe tier and above. Here's the GM screen, which again seems to come with every edition except the digital one, of course. So kind of cool. It says original artwork, but it is just the symbols overall. Maybe this will be updated as we go on to make it look a little fancier, but it's nice enough. The world map, probably one of the standout items that I saw people reacting to when I posted this on Twitter. Very much this kind of nautical map of the Avatar world. I like all the images added throughout, where you have the ships. There's a line turtle here, different animals in different areas. You can see, like, here's the sea serpent from the Serpent's Pass, kind of sand shark in the desert. You have the unagi here. These are elephant koi, I think, and some other kind of animals as well. Here's a sky bison. Looks very, very nice. Printed on heavy paper. Helps you track the Unity's travel in the world, which I guess starts from probably up here, sees you kind of go all the way down here, is my guess. But that's cool. Heavy paper. Again, I wonder if one of the stretch goals will maybe be to add that, increase the material potentially, so it's maybe on board game like kind of material, or mouse mat like material if you really want. Because heavy paper, when I read that, it kind of feels like, is that just like kind of poster kind of paper, slightly thicker? You definitely want that to be decently kind of durable. Bending scrolls, then, this is the kind of big one here, because like I said, I think this is going to be the big high-end kind of the probably the extra physical item that they put the most effort into here, because they had to design this whole thing to make it work, and multiple of them. Modeled after Katara's stolen waterbending scroll from ATLA, beautifully illustrated scrolls teach readers how to bend elements of their choice. Choose from earthbending, waterbending, airbending, and firebending. Additional scrolls may be unlocked via stretch goal. So one of the few mentions of a specific stretch goal seems to be that in addition to the standard 4, there might be more. On the Twitch stream where they talked before this was all announced about this, they mentioned like there was maybe a dragon tier as like maybe the ultimate tier overall that features a dancing dragon scroll. So unless the fire scroll just is the dancing dragon scroll, that might be like an extra fancier scroll that gets added in after the fact. So what's the deal there? Because again, I'll note this mentions scrolls plural, but then it previously mentions scrolls singular. So when you're buying the Legendary Edition, are you choosing one or are you getting multiple? And this is where I do wonder what the significance kind of really is, because if you have to pay for like 5-6 of these things, this is going to be very expensive. If you're only getting one, I think it's going to keep the costs down a decent bit. I like the choice. I like that they're giving you the option, and it's not just a waterbending scroll, because that's the thing from the show. Especially with it being Roku era, it makes sense that you would have scrolls from all of the disciplines, and maybe more. So, this is definitely where I think a lot of the high-end stuff is going to come in that, like, if you're going to be spending money on this thing, it's going to be to buy all of the bending scrolls. So, that's a big thing. So yeah, this is where we get into the pledge tiers, like I said. So there is PDF tier, standard tier, deluxe tier, legendary tier, and then potentially, if what they said before was a different tier, dragon tier, as like an all-in tier of like everything together. And then maybe they might have like a retailer tier if anyone wants to maybe like sell this in their shop at some point down the road. That seems to be an option on these things sometimes. But there might be another tier in between, or something like that. So there's going to be options. I do like that you can go very basic, just get very similar to the previous releases if you want, or you can go up through the ranks of like, how much extra physical stuff do you want? And then I'm guessing you can kind of pick and mix as well, because there's add-ons. I'm guessing like it's like, oh, I want the standard edition and one scroll. I guess you could do that probably if you want, and you can choose which scroll it is. And that's fine. Maybe you just want this and the full coin set. That's fine. You pay your standard price plus a little bit extra, and that's going to be cool. Because if we assume that all this extra stuff is the add-ons, then you look at it and it's like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, but then will they be super separate on all of this? Like, would you have to buy each of the coins separately, each of the scrolls separately? In that case, then it's like this set of things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for the pouch, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, maybe depending on how many bending scrolls there is. Is that all of the add-ons, or is there more to be added in as well? Because also like the screen might be another add-on if you wanted like a second one. There are always those sort of options that they're going to offer with this as part of all that stuff. So yeah, it looks pretty exciting. I'm actually getting more and more excited for this as we get closer. I think definitely the addition to Ryoshan to 2 of the images, if that is her, gets me a little bit more excited. I hope they talk a little bit more about the material, maybe some preview pages just to highlight like what characters are going to be involved a little bit more, because it feels like they're promoting the physical stuff a bit more than the underlying content. So I hope they get that across really well, because it's going to be an interesting one in terms of like, where am I going here? Let's go back here. Yeah, because this is the original Kickstarter. The original Kickstarter had over 80,000 backers for nearly $10 million in terms of how much they made. This, by virtue of only being like an adventure set in one era, the Roku era, and it's specifically about the Unity, is a little bit more niche of a kind of set. Plus, it's leaning much more into the physical items stuff. Is this going to have the same appeal or not? How much marketing is going to go into this? I'm not really sure. Because I can see some people coming in on this just because there is all this physical stuff. That this is a selection of physical items that you can't really get anywhere else, and there's not merch really out there that's like this. Like, where can you get a proper bending scroll? Well, it kind of has to be here. Where can you get, the money of Avatar? Well, you get it here. That people will grab this and almost treat maybe the RPG material as extra. I can see people doing that as maybe collectors. So how well will it do in terms of like what are the stretch goals going to be? They're obviously not going to make 10 million because I just think it's too niche at its core for that. But like, are we talking maybe 1 million as like a possible thing here? Or is it more like maybe half that? Because like you have the Game Found Journey of Aang thing kind of was, I think, in or around that range, and that might be more of what we're dealing with here. But again, a lot depends on the marketing is definitely ramping up for this, but how many people will be there day one to check out what this is? And I think this is where stuff like, yeah, this is a nice thing to kind of highlight, but I think they maybe need to highlight the material a little bit more. Really push like, hey, new characters, that sort of thing. Push the art a bit more overall to get that across. So finally, I guess some brief speculation on pricing. My guess is, let me just quickly bring up the Magpie website. Okay, let's look at the pricing for Magpie's stuff. Core book is $50. And the adventure guides, the Republic City books and stuff like that are $40. So the special edition book is $80. So I kind of wonder, like, will they offer something like this for the new book or not? That's an interesting kind of point overall. They tend to promote the other stuff as being like, you know, $15 for a booklet type thing. So what way are they going to price the kind of standard edition, given that it is 5 books in one? It has to be starting from this point, is that this is a $40 thing where it's the same content here. Like, this book is 5 adventures plus some Jasmine Island lore, which is very equivalent, in a hardcover thing. The difference is that this will be booklets in a box, and I think that's about the same. So the only extra thing that they're offering in the standard edition is that you get a GM guide free, I guess. So we're talking 40, maybe 50 for the standard edition, because the GM guide is kind of, the GM screen, sorry, is there. Because, like, yeah, this features, I think, a PDF as well when you buy this sort of stuff. So that definitely is what the pricing has to be about for this. Otherwise, you sort of know they're going a little bit overboard on this. Now, who knows? Maybe stretch goals add a lot more in, but they typically are free extras rather than anything else. So, yeah, this has to be 40 or 50 is the realistic estimation if you're paying attention to the way they do their stuff. And especially if this maybe does get a stretch goal to combine this all together into a hardcover book, 5 adventures and the guide, then yeah, it's effectively, you know, a standard release, but it comes in a box and has the GM screen. So at most 60, but it really should be probably 40 or 50 for this. Then we need to talk about what is the pricing for some of this extra stuff that we have here. So Magpie, I think, do have some of the extra stuff separately. Obviously, we don't have anything that's that crazy just yet. Their GM screen, they're saying, is 20. So that's why I'm saying maybe 60 is like the outlier price type thing. Journal packs, you know, White Lotus tile. They sell the one White Lotus tile, which is quite small, for 10. So this is where we maybe get into the idea of you're getting a set of 4 in a little pouch. I'd immediately jump to feeling like this is maybe like 20, 25, 30. But actually, if you add it up in that way, is this like $50 worth of stuff? I'm not really sure. That feels a little bit overdone. There's all the digital stuff. They have a cloth map with the Pie Show tile for 20. So that gives you a sense that, like, okay, the heavy paper map can't quite be 20, so it's going to be 10 or 15. The big pile of paper, it depends on how much is here, but again, are we talking 10, 15? And then it's like, okay, how much extra is that adding on? And it's like, okay, 15, like 30 extra. This set, I don't know, maybe 40 for this. So that's about like 70 extra in addition to, like, say, the original cost of this, like 50. You're talking 120 so far-ish. So then the big question is, how much do the bending scrolls add on top of that? Because these seem like the most kind of high-end expensive thing, and that, like, they're either going to be made of plastic, maybe they are made of wood, that makes them fancier. They seem to be able to actually roll out. They have some sort of kind of thing on the top to kind of lock it in place. Depending on how fancy these actually look in kind of maybe better pictures, I'm guessing at least 20 per scroll, assuming they are the size that they are, if not more, like 30, 40, maybe even more for each of these. And if there is going to be 4 and maybe 2 others, one or 2 others, that's like 5 or 6 scrolls, and that could be anywhere from at least 100 to maybe 200 if you want all of them. So this set could be anywhere from like the cheapest is probably going to be is like maybe like 150, 170, but it's probably going to be more like, you know, 200 to 300, depending on how much they go for it. And again, that's just estimating stuff. It's so difficult to judge the pricing on a lot of this stuff overall, because this seems excessively expensive, but then some of it maybe seems a little bit more reasonable. Like the map here seems a little bit better value. You can get these journals for 10, but they're the same price as this tiny little token. It's so hard to judge. So gonna wrap it up there. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on Voyage of the Unity. What do you feel is going to happen here? Thoughts on the pledge tiers, add-ons? What do you think the cost is going to be? How successful do you think it's going to be, given how different it is than the original Kickstarter? And are you interested at all, full stop? And then also, do you have any thoughts on the new Duels Displate posters here? So yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.